That's what entire heliocentrism is. And it's been worked on for a very long time. A lot of people spent a lot of very focused time on getting it just right.
That's right, describing it just right, so the world you think you live in is the same as the model they've made of a sphere Earth.
Yeah, and it's an eloquent model. It's a very eloquent model. It's just wrong.
It's just not the world we live in.
They use that as a defense when it come down to, you know, if it was a public debate and someone was pointing out all the flaws in the model, would they use that as the defense?
Possibly. It depends if the debate has been structured around the model proving that the Earth was a sphere, which is there's a good chance it would be.
Yeah, most of the time they won't even enter into a debate unless they can force you to hold up a model for their false dichotomies. Unless they can force you to hold up a model for their false dichotomies.
Correct. That's what the guy was trying to do yesterday. How do you explain tectonic activity on a flat Earth? Well, what's tectonic activity? What's a tectonic plate? What are you describing? And then forcing me into a position where what I have to, because you demand it, give you a description of that on a flat plane so that we've got a nice setup for you to burn a straw man that's been built at your behest. You must build a straw man for me to burn. Describe this heliocentric nonsense claim on a flat Earth so I can burn it in front of you. And if you don't, then I won't take part in this game. That's what the guy tried yesterday. When it got to, well, what's a tectonic plate? He instantly knew he was screwed. So he wouldn't take part anymore. Just descended this show into a shit show.
Right, Nathan, but how would you see tectonic plates on a flat Earth, though?
What's a tectonic plate? Want to show me one?
No. You have to go to a geologist and look at their graphs and listen to their maths and then believe they're right.
But we've only dug down about 12k. How far down do these plates extend? Aren't they the entirety of the crust on a heliocentric sphere Earth?
Yes, and
just said we've only dug down 12k. How can you possibly assert that we know what's the entire composition of the Earth's crust when assumed to be a sphere with a molten iron core if we've only dug down 8 miles?
Well, heliocentrists know it. They have certainty of what it's like. Why don't you? Just because only we've dug 8 miles deep? Come on.
Well, it's a heliocentric description that they've got absolutely no validity for and no proof or demonstrable evidence of. It's a claim that they make, as a heliocentrist, on a sphere Earth with a molten iron core and a crust and tectonic plates making up that crust. Well, prove that. What do you mean explain how that works on a flat Earth? What, your idea that the layer of the Earth that you've got no idea what composes is actually digging itself beneath another massive thick layer because of the molten surface that's really hot beneath, making a solid turn to liquid and dig itself underneath to then dissolve into molten metal? No, you've got to show me that that's actually the case before I start explaining it on a model I haven't asserted.
That's a lot of words for just saying, yeah, sorry, I can't calculate it, unlike heliocentrists.
Oh, right, I can't calculate this thing that you can't prove actually happens.
Yep.
Oh, well, so if I can prove my calculations in terms of unicorn digestion...
Sounds interesting. What is this unicorn digestion model for tectonic plates on a flat Earth, Nathan?
There's no unicorns. Do you want to show me tectonic plates?
Well, maybe the tectonic plates are the actual intestines on the unicorn.
Maybe the unicorn is the tectonic plates. Yeah. If we descend this into farce. Meanwhile, it's an assertion that a heliocentrist makes because they were taught it in about 7th grade. But the evidence was presented as cartoons and pictures of sphere Earth with a core. But the evidence was presented as cartoons and pictures of sphere Earth with a core.
I know. They got their own elaborately made up and calculated story that they have no proof for. And then they're like, haha, you don't even have a story about this, silly flat earthers. Yeah, you don't have a story.
Refutation.
See, that's a bunch of bullcrap.
Refutation does not require replacement. Just because they've invented a story about unicorns doesn't mean I've got to come up with a comparative story when I annihilate that claim. Likewise, if someone wants to make a claim about tectonic plates and then ask me how their claim works on my model I haven't claimed, then they're going to be asked to, first and foremost, describe what a tectonic plate is, which is exactly what happened. The guy refused, because he knows the moment I'm asking him a question about something like tectonic plates, it's going to end badly.
Because it's part of the geology curriculum, that's why.
Break down what that means for him, if you would. It's part of the consensus reality. That's what we are part of. I don't like it either, Neal. But when it was laid out before me, I was aghast when I heard it for the first time, laid down. And someone pointed out, no, that is the science we're talking about. Leonardo DiCaprio, on a very mainstream, I believe, propaganda-based movie, is very literally saying what we take apart. So he's saying, your computer's based on the scientific method. No, it isn't. But that nonsense is more than happy to be tolerated because they're all spinning out their pseudoscience and asserting it as being empirical. So they need that magic trick to be purveyed out wide and far by all. So it being there in a mainstream movie is the very thing we brace against. But what is that? Well, that's consensus science. That's the society that we live in. We've all been indoctrinated and brainwashed to accept that consensus science and even at some level believe it to be empirical. That's what the whole sentiment of the Don't Look Up movie is. Yeah? You're not trusting in the mathematics of the pseudoscientists. Don't you understand that my science is empirical, your computer came from it? All lies, all nonsense. But there it is in a very mainstream movie. There for everyone to watch on Netflix. Christmas Day. Well, that's the problem we're bracing against. A consensus reality where everyone believes that because everyone believes we're on a sphere, we're on a sphere. I mean, that's what we're faced with. That's it.
That nobody did a peer review on this guy's work, and then they just went out and did it, and it failed miserably.
Nobody did a peer review on it.
Right. Well, that could also mean nobody actually tested whether his model had any legitimacy to it.
Yeah, sorry, those two words in that context do not go together. Unless you're talking about a model that's based on scientific empiricism, which it won't be in this context. Beyond doubt, we're talking about heliocentric models. So no, when he says it's not been through peer review, it's not even been through peer review, who cares? So what? So if it did go through peer review and come out the other end happy as Larry, but hasn't actually been through the scientific method, the thing he claimed the computer had come from, well then you haven't got any empiricism attached to it. At least they still have to lay the seed that there's empiricism attached by mentioning the scientific method, so it jogs your memory from when you were in school and they told you about how that method's empirical. At least they still have to lay the seed that there's empiricism attached by mentioning the scientific method, so it jogs your memory from when you were in school and they told you about how that method's empirical. So you've still got to drop it in at some point.
I have a question. How do we know that that would even happen if a comet hit the Earth? How the heck do we know that that's what would happen? Because that's what killed the dinosaur?
That's right, Neal. Do you want me to tell you the little story about 65 million years ago? Because I can tell you that little bedtime story. So that, obviously, we haven't mentioned that. That's a very good point, actually, Neal. We haven't mentioned that the presupposition of the orbital mechanical mathematics that will lead you to believe that a rock in a sky vacuum is actually traversing space, that the sky isn't being a void for the gas we're breathing to fill, and making its way through your mathematics to collide with Earth. Now, Neal's saying, how do we know that something that in their claim, in their narrative, in a heliocentric model, with all things assumed, is going to wipe out Earth if it hits it? Well, because we were all told as kids that there's a rock that wiped out the dinosaurs, aren't we, Neal? That's why. So we've got that part of the narrative, and they gave us a little reminder of the dinosaur narrative at the end. So when you're like, I'm shocked that they mentioned dinosaurs and had them eating people, why? When that's very much part of the story and is in there, if you want to call it foreshadowing, for those of us in the know.
Bronchosaurus.
Within the model, though, when you talk about gravity, and you're presupposing a sphere, and the way that you stated that sphere is this magic non-force force that you can think of as a force, but isn't a force, the energy that comet would create as it entered the air that's not filling the space would be significant enough to do massive amounts of damage.
And you've factored in the gas pressure without a container that's a nice little bed barrier because it hasn't dispersed into the sky vacuum. Did that even calculate? Because to me, when you were calculating the air resistance that the comet would encounter when reaching the sphere-shaped air that's not dispersing, obviously it acts like a cushion. And there's no barrier to make it act like a cushion. It's just a cushion of air that's not expanding into the space it's got to fill. So that would have been calculable. Not. When you were calculating the air resistance that the comet would encounter when reaching the sphere-shaped air that's not dispersing, obviously it acts like a cushion. And there's no barrier to make it act like a cushion. It's just a cushion of air that's not expanding into the space it's got to fill. So that would have been calculable. Not.
I think I put that in there.
You think they put that in there? That what, the natural law violation that would be gas not filling space to performing a cushion for the comet? That was calculated, was it?
No, I put that in there. I said the air not filling the space.
Oh, I see. So the air that doesn't fill the space, you know, the comet's travelling towards that air, and there's a certain amount of it that's just like chilling, violating natural law at the Kármán line, waiting to be impacted by a comet to slow it down by a certain factor. And that was factored in the gas pressure without a container, violating natural law, slowing down the comet's trajectory. Oh, of course, they've thought of everything.
Well, it's not that it's not going anywhere. It's just it's expending all of its energy with trying to keep up with its position on Earth.
Keep up with its energy? Is it not just falling through a geodesic in space-time?
It is falling through a geodesic in space-time, but that fall is representative of it keeping up with the movement of the Earth.
I see. I mean, some people have never even heard of orbital mechanics in a heliocentric system. I mean, bloody hell. So yeah, if you're a heliocentrist and you happen to have watched Don't Look Up, be afraid. Be very, very, very afraid that you could be wiped out at any moment by a rock from the sky vacuum. And whether or not you choose to calculate in how much resistance the sphere-shaped air that's not expanding into the space it's got to fill is going to present to that comet, you can, if you want to. Just take the volume of the air to be arbitrarily assigned at the Kármán line. That's what I'd suggest, in line with heliocentric rhetoric.
Well, isn't the best part of the propaganda of that movie is that anybody that disagrees with that is dangerous? Because if they would have just listened, you know, so
absolutely,
remember, we're dangerous too.
On the show we mainly covered this on. That was my main point. If you don't listen to the underdog heliocentric astronomer that's telling you that a comet's going to hit Earth, then I assure you that will lead to the most dire of consequences, possibly the extinction of the entire species. That's what could happen if you don't listen to your friendly, local, neighbourhood astronomer. Because they are doing the maths, keeping it real.
And the scriptures remind us in Mark 13, 23 through 26. But take ye heed, behold, I have foretold you all things. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory.